Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the vast and ominous Comic Vault. Tis I, and also the ReQuest. It's another 2-for-1 deal. I'm Captain Logan, and joining me, as always, is the wonderful The Day Ghost. The Day Ghost. Hello, Austin. How you doing, sir?
Can you pass the salt?
You know, I don't think I've ever been in this room before.
I definitely haven't. There's like a man behind me.
Today we're doing another comic request. This is 2 for 3 in a row. And actually, I think maybe the very next thing after that is also going to be comics, now that I'm looking at this. You know what? There actually might be a movie we got to do before that, but at least 3 comics in a row. And this time we're going to tackle yet another arc from Punisher Max, not to be confused with Jason Aaron's Punisher Max, because this whole thing is really weird, because the original run of this says Max on the side like it's an imprint, but the actual publishing data on it's not called Punisher Max. It was like the current run of Punisher, but it's not in canon with 616. And it's the big run that's considered Punisher Max. And so if you ever try to find it digitally, it can be really confusing to even find this. But anyway, which is also weird because it's kind of now the most famous and beloved Punisher run, Garth Ennis's Punisher. But anyway, this was requested once again by Chewbacca's Lover. This is the 3rd time he's asked for an arc of this. And luckily, Austin happens to be a big fan of this material and knows it pretty well, and it wasn't difficult for him to jump in because he's actually read probably all of this. I'm going to assume all of this.
I've read all of this. Yeah, it's been a few years now, so it's not like all fresh in my mind, but it was like pretty easy to just pick it up and get back to it.
So when was the last time you read any of this?
When was the last time? 2017, maybe. I read it on a Disney cruise. So I was sitting around around Disney characters reading Punisher Max.
That's all right. It's still a property they own.
Yeah, exactly.
This is Volume 7, and I'm informed by Austin that this is a sequel to an arc that I've not read, but it also is, it read to me anyway, a direct sequel to an arc I did read, because it brings back some characters that were in Up is Down, Black is White, which I remember reading and liking, and I remember the supporting characters, but I don't remember a ton about the actual story because it's been so long since I've read it, and I didn't have time to sit down and read it again. So I'm still very much a newcomer with this material. I'm going to review this more or less as its own thing as much as I can, and with what little I can remember from the other stuff from this that I've read, and Austin will help me to fill in the blanks because he actually knows this material and he's more invested in this, and this is more up his alley. I always like to be forthcoming and let everybody know that this is not really my thing. I'm not a big Punisher fan. It's never been a character that's really resonated with me real hard. The concept is interesting, and I've liked some Punisher things, but it's not kind of like I think Dan has with Batman versus Spider-Man. Like, it's just not a character study that I get real invested in. I do find Punisher really interesting as a more extreme, more damaged version of Batman. Like, in comparing him to Batman, I think he's a really interesting character, and I think that there's a lot of different superheroes that you can kind of put on this spectrum of trauma and damage and madness, and like Spider-Man's at one end and Batman's in maybe the middle, and Punisher is like on the other end of that, and Daredevil is somewhere on this side, and Superman is way over here, like on well past even the Spider-Man side. And so I find him interesting mostly in comparison to other superheroes, and thinking of him as a vigilante who's not really a superhero but lives in that world. Of course, in this stuff, it really is just a world that revolves around him, and it's not really about any other characters in Marvel, save occasionally Fury, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, though, with this, because you're saying, like, I definitely know this a lot more than you do, but I don't remember the 4th arc as well, so that's like a blank that we kind of both have. It's really weird because it's been so long. It's like I remember the first 3 arcs really well, and then I remember like 5, 6, now 7, which I didn't remember super well until we went back to it. and I know 8 really well. So there's just like the two blank spots. One of them is like the story that's being built on with this one, and one was this story. So like that is kind of interesting.
Yeah, of the three of these I've read, this is the one that seems to be most mired in continuity, where it does feel like it wants you to have read some of the material from before. The other two stood alone pretty well, felt like kind of pieces of more of a vignette thing maybe, as opposed to like a big ongoing serialized narrative. And so I have to be honest, I was lost here and there a little bit with some plotting stuff, and I was kind of racking my brain to remember what exactly had happened and how much backstory especially we had with O'Brien and Rollins in particular.
Yeah, and Punisher Max in general isn't a series that is like constantly building on itself. It is typically just like, 6 issue story, issue story, 6 issue story, and they're all pretty just standalone. You can kind of jump in and read any of them.
Yeah, I
And
said
this is kind
vignette.
of
I
what I'm
mean
into with it.
anthology, right? Like,
Yeah.
like there is a timeline certainly, and this does seem to be happening in real time.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing with Punisher Max is that it's a Punisher that's, I think, like pushing 60. Like they say in this arc that he's been around for about 30 years. So you have a much older Punisher, and you're just kind of dealing with real world stuff and just moving forward instead of kind of being stuck like the Marvel Universe is.
Yeah, which I sometimes resist in mainstream comics, but it's case by case. I take things on their own terms. It works fine in this. It's not, again, exactly my cup of tea. A lot of things I don't like about this are just taste issue things, and I can write them off because it works fine for this material. Like, my preference generally with comics, and especially superhero comics, but this only, like barely even counts in that if it does at all. But usually with something that would have the Marvel or the DC stamp on it, I much prefer like allegory or paralleling events to historical things as opposed to just straight up dealing with whatever's happening in the world right this very moment. It's not a good story, but Civil War is more the kind of thing that I want if we're gonna tackle certain like real world issues with war situations and certain social things, as opposed to just going. Here's the war on terror, and here's what the world is like after 9/11, and like it's been 5 years in the real world at the time that this comes out, and it's been 5 years in this world since that came out, and it's making some pretty bold statements about specifically what was going on right then. And I think if I'd read this back then, it would have just felt too close to home and I would have had a hard time enjoying it. But this is also material that is in some ways meant to be enjoyed and in some ways is meant to be cautionary and unsettling and, unfun as well. This was not a straight up enjoyable experience, certainly. I think the other two arcs I read, even though there's even more bone-chilling stuff, I would say, in the last one I read, if memory serves. But this was ultra depressing, and again, full disclosure, I was absolutely not in the mood for this when I first sit down and read it. I was like, oh no, we'll spoil everything. I'm just not in the headspace to watch a Russian Kingpin guy. I mean, I say Kingpin. He looks like Kingpin. I will compare him to Kingpin a lot in this, by the way. But a like Russian general who's kind of gone AWOL and he's doing his own thing, throw a baby off a cliff. Like, I was just not in the headspace for that. I went back and reread the material because it's been a few days, and knowing what was coming, I think I was able to appreciate the material a lot more. But I was hit sideways a few times in the ways I think that I was intended to be, and I think the ways in which I wasn't enjoying this story is certainly a testament to it. It's doing what it's setting out to do, certainly. It's effective.
Yeah, no, there's definitely like a level of the horrors of war with this arc, and specifically in terms of the war on terror and just like what that did to Afghanistan.
And what it does to individuals.
hmm Yeah, no, that too.
The character-wise and thematically, this arc is all about, and I guess Opposite Black and White had some of this as well. I mean, there's obviously some major ongoing themes that seem to tie all of this material together, even if it's not a lot of story building on top of story. Again, direct sequel to a couple of things going on here, and in some ways, it felt like an inferior movie sequel to me to Up is Down, Black is White, where it's like we've got loose ends, we've got to get rid of some characters and then move on, and it's not terrible about it. It just kind of watched like we've got to finish some things up, so it's an okay sequel, but it's not as good as the original. Is kind of what it read like to me. But thematically, it's very much about characters that feel like they are living outside of society in order to save society or make it better in some way, with the exception of the Punisher, of course, who doesn't seem to be about trying to fix anything because he thinks it's unfixable. And so it's really much more, for him, about punishing the people that ruin his life and have made him feel the way he wants to. And this arc suggests, again, I think there's some allusion to this in the other stuff that I read, that in some ways the Punisher is the villain of his own story. In some ways he's just as bad or worse than, like, I really like the character parallels between him and this big bald Russian kingpin guy that we're looking at on this cover. In some ways he's even worse than this guy, because this guy is the Man of Stone, and Punisher in his own way is also kind of a Man of Stone, and both of them have a code, and it's kind of up to you to decide which one has the better code. And it, in a really weird, almost perverse way, ends up being about ends-based ethics versus virtue-based ethics, where the Punisher is virtue-based. But you have to decide if his virtue is the right virtue, right? His virtue is these people are bad, full stop, they deserve to die, that's it. Uncompromising in a Rorschach kind of way. And this guy, the Man of Stone, I forget his actual name, it's Russian. Bald Russian kingpin guy, he thinks that he is a necessary evil. And Punisher isn't necessary evil. Punisher is, these people are evil, and I am the Grim Reaper. And the Man of Stone is, like I said, necessary evil. If without someone like me, the world will always be as corrupt and scary and awful as it is, and I have to have no emotion whatsoever and do the worst possible atrocities in order to make it to where those atrocities will never happen again. And again, in a weird, perverse way, he's saying that I want the world to be a better place, and the Punisher doesn't. And there's that great conversation with the British general toward the end, where he's saying that Punisher is like that nobody understands like who he is and how he got to be the way he is, and there's this kind of question of whether there's any more humanity left in Punisher than there is this guy. But then Punisher would never throw a baby off a cliff. And Punisher seems to sometimes care about individuals. So, like, which one is better? There's a question there. And so, anyway, all of that analysis to say that I was really interested in the thematic ideas in this, and all of that, all the kind of character and idea paralleling between those two characters was really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then you have Rollins, the kind of like spy guy, and they that's just weird two words to throw together, but anyways, and you get kind of like an interesting look at
missing eye spy guy.
Yeah, that's not Nick. You have not Kingpin, and you have not Nick Fury. And the kind of difference between him and Punisher and the and Russian Kingpin, because he's a spy and not this like army person. I almost said army guy. Not working fully today, apparently. Like I like how there's a lot of talks about how not Nick Fury will kind of betray anybody in order to get ahead, and that's something that the Punisher and not Kingpin can kind of look at each other and kind of have like some sort of respect for each other. Like Punisher kills Russian Kingpin instead of just leaving him like Nick Fury does. Not Nick Fury.
Rollins.
Yeah, Rollins, thank you. Apparently somebody said he's in the Netflix show, and I don't remember that.
He is, but I don't remember anything beyond the fact that he's there. That show has not stuck with me, really.
No, I maybe remember like 3 scenes from that, and one of them is just because I think it's really funny.
I like that show, and we won't just get into a review of that, especially because we don't remember much about it. But I remember that always feeling like that first season could have been trimmed down to like 2 or 3 episodes. It felt so decompressed on almost like a Beyond Bendis level. And Chewbacca's Lover, maybe a couple other people earlier were kind of lamenting before we started how that show takes a lot from this series, but it would be a lot better if it more full stop adapted it, or at least adapted more instead of going its own way, because the direction it goes is maybe a little bit duller than some of what's done here. I almost wish, the more I've read of this, that, and it could do some of its own stories, certainly, but I wish it kind of cherry-picked some of the best arcs in this, and maybe some other things maybe borrowed from even some of Jason Aaron, which is more of a, like, full-on serialized narrative, but is, I think, my favorite Punisher thing, and some other things, and just did a anthology show where episode to episode it was, it was kind of like traditional 80s or 90s TV, but could have a continuity and build on certain things like this does. I think, or even do like 2-episode arcs. Like I think that show would have been. I think this character is better served for that format than something real long form.
Mm-hmm. No, that's what I've always said. That's what I like about Punisher Max, is that they're very short stories, and it's just, here's villain, Punisher gets the villain, and then he kills them. Like, you can't really drag that across 13 episodes, like 13 hours. At a certain point, I'm just waiting for the Punisher to kill the bad guys.
Now, to be fair, I think that show got in one of the first shorter orders, or was the first season 13?
No.
I can't remember now. I know second was shorter.
No, I'm pretty sure the second
was it still 13?
Yeah.
Did they not finally shorten them until like the last couple of seasons they made? Was the third Jessica Jones shorter than 13?
I don't know, because I didn't follow that, but like Luke Cage season 2 is 13.
Was still 13.
I know Iron Fist was shortened.
Boy, did that meander.
Oh my god. Hot take, Luke Cage season 2 is the worst Netflix season. I hate that season so much.
It's not, I don't agree that it's the worst. It's super rough, absolutely, but it has merit in a couple of places, and I can't say that at all about Iron Fist.
I got to see a man get killed over
or the second season of Jessica Jones,
Fist.
Which I think I might actually.
Better.
That's true. Iron Fist is at least amusing in some places, in just how ridiculously bad it is and the counterintuitive places it goes. I think the most unwatchable season of those shows is Jessica Jones season 2.
It's one of them. For me, it's Luke Cage, though, because I spent like the entire last half of it sitting like this and just being like, I want Punisher to show up and kill everyone, including Luke Cage, in the show.
RJ Godzilla, Jessica Jones season 2 is the absolute worst. I think I agree. I think it is.
It's definitely one of them.
Chewbacca's Lover says Jason Aaron is the ending of this continuity. I wasn't sure if it was actually set in this continuity or not. I think it reads really well all by itself. Having read it all by itself and having not read this before that, it just felt like the tail end of an older Punisher's career, and he's so in the background until the third arc, if memory serves. And what I'm starting to realize about the Punisher is I see him as such a... I mean, I have the same thing that some people have with Batman that don't really care for Batman, where the problem is he refuses to change, and ergo he's not interesting. I don't have that with Batman. I think Batman constantly being pushed to change and refusing to, and sometimes getting closer, in some cases actually kind of changing, all of that is really interesting to me. With a character who is trying to be like almost godlike in a lot of ways, but is still just a man. Punisher really is that to me, where he's a man who refuses to change, doesn't seem to have any difficulty not changing, has given away his humanity, doesn't need it anymore. To some degree, again, he's got a code. I like what you said earlier about the ways in which these two guys can respect each other. That's absolutely true, but he is more that way to me. So what I'm finding is I like Punisher stories where it's not about him. I want him to be in the background. It's kind of like good Sam and Twitch stories with Spawn in the background. Maybe Spawn stories don't need to be Spawn about Spawn. Maybe they're better if they're not. If he's just in the background doing things. And I'm having that with the Punisher.
Yeah, I like the Punisher as a character, but there is that Batman aspect, especially with Punisher Max, where a lot of the stuff that I find interesting is the kind of grander plots that he's kind of put in. And I think Garth Ennis, more than most Punisher writers, kind of gets the idea of you need like really bad villains for Punisher. Like you can't just
Good
have,
point.
you just like random thug character. I mean you can do that for like a Punisher story, but like he gets the type of villains you want to see the Punisher fight. You know what I mean?
Well, and you want him to be challenged
Hmm.
by characters that have their own. I think Punisher villains have to be extreme and revenge-seeking in their own way. A lot of them, right? In the same way that so many Batman villains are a dark reflection of Batman and show like just what he could have been if he went in a different direction. And like a lot of Spider-Man villains are that way too. It's like this is what Peter Parker might have been if he hadn't learned the responsibility lesson. Here's what Batman would look like if he picked up a gun and started shooting people. If he let himself go that far. And Punisher is the extreme of here's what Batman might do if Batman went too far. But there's even worse stuff than that, and that's what Punisher villains are.
Yeah, and with Punisher Max, a lot of the villains are kind of like grander corruption and not so much just, like I said, just like whatever gang that he fights. Like, we're dealing with this Russian general in this one. In the Slavers, you have uh, this kind of like organization that's kind of hidden and so forth. And the Barracuda arc is all about like the kind of like 1%. You get like a lot of that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you've got the mob boss types in Up is Down, Black is White that are maybe a reflection of the kinds of people that killed Punisher's family or created the world that made that happen. I don't want to go back and try to analyze that again because I don't remember it very much, but
No, for sure. I was trying to think of what even happened in that arc, and then I remember you telling me something about they dig up his family, and I was like, oh, okay, I remember that. Like
yeah.
that part came back to me. But that is an arc I don't remember super well.
I do like that one quite a bit. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into a little bit of synopsis with this, and then I talked a lot about thematic stuff, so we'll just kind of get into the effectiveness of the storytelling and art and stuff. So, Austin, would you give us just a real quick breakdown? What happens in this one?
So, okay, before we get to this one, back in the third arc, Nick Fury, actual Nick Fury, not Rollins, the fake Nick Fury, the real Nick Fury. Uh,
It's so funny because, sorry, I have to stop you. While I was reading this, I never made that comparison, even though he's wearing an eye patch the whole time, because he's just so slimy.
No, it's just because I called him a spy guy with one eye.
And
So.
it's funny that
And I
I'm saying that
I
because
part.
yeah, but like Nick Fury, but like while you're reading the arc, did you find yourself going like not Nick Fury?
Oh no.
Oh,
No,
okay,
something I
okay.
just thought of in the moment when I was like
Because
having a hard time describing
I didn't
him.
think to compare those characters, but you should, and that might some of that might be a little bit intentional, given that they're both spy types, because they're both manipulators, but in really different ways. Like Nick Fury does, to some degree, believe in something, right? So like, he manipulates people. He's got that Amanda Waller thing to a degree. He's got the ends justify the means, but he's not going whichever way the wind blows. Like Rollins is only out for himself. Fury, in some ways, is more comparable to the Russian guy.
Yeah, that is true. It is maybe a little strange they didn't bring Fury back for that parallel. But
He's
so in
mentioned,
the
but yeah.
yeah, because they're building off of some of that stuff. So in the third arc, Nick Fury gets the Punisher, and he's like, "Hey, there's this Russian base we need to get rid of, and the U.S. government can't be caught being the ones to take it out. So we're gonna send you in because you're not like you don't work for the government. So there's like a plausible deniability." So they send Punisher in. Punisher wipes out this Russian base. Now we find out that the Man of Stone, who is Russian Kingpin, he was the one who ran that base, and the Russians just want revenge on the Punisher, and the Punisher doesn't like loose ends, so the two of them are gonna fight. It's Ivan versus GI Joe, and only one can win.
And we're bringing back Rollins and his ex-wife from the Up is Down, Black is White arc. I think they're both there, and tying. I guess like I said earlier, like I guess that's Annis himself tying up loose ends with those characters because Rollins spends the entire time trying to convince. The Man of Stone to give him a job and to let him live, and he keeps negotiating with information just for his own life and not to get like his genitals sawed off and things because that's this book, man. It goes to the nines with the graphic violence and with kind of horrific imagery and stuff. I there are a couple of pages that I picked when we get into showing art here in a little bit that are a little bit gruesome, but for the most part, I left out the roughest, bloodiest stuff. And you'll see some language too. We won't swear, but the book will, and there's no way around. There's no way around that. I was gonna go in and black out everything.
No, I was thinking about that when reading it. I was like, oh, if Cap brings out pages like he did for Kamen Rider, there's no like possible chance you can find one without swearing.
No, we may have to just flip really fast with the. There's at least one place with a really giant f-bomb. Ennis doesn't stay away from that at all. And again, not necessarily to my taste, but to some degree, it makes it more realistic. I think sometimes there's a lot more of that than there really needs to be, where it's not realistic. And I'm jumping around. I've got a little bit of dialogue stuff with this particular arc where I think sometimes characters are speaking in a little bit of a kind of cliche or trite way. He is, I think, trying a little bit too hard with British lingo.
Yeah.
It's a little cartoony in places with that, but anyway, I digress. So why don't we talk a little bit about the, for lack of a better way to put it, romance with Frank Castle and O'Brien, and how did you feel about the way that whole thing was handled?
Um, it's very one-sided in that they make it kind of clear that she maybe has feelings for him, but the Punisher doesn't really, which makes sense for the Punisher to me. He's just kind of a guy that he's so just like tunnel visioned on what like on his goal that he doesn't really think about anything outside of that. So I like how he treats it, and I do like that he does kind of ultimately care for her when she dies, and like he is, upset about that. But I don't think they have like more than just kind of like a hookup-y like relationship on his end.
Yeah, I think on her end, it could have been more than that if he would have
Mm.
allowed it to be, because the two of them have the trauma that they have in common and the way they live their life in common. And again, this book at large seems to be so much about the way people high up in the military, or if they ever have been, that are part of this world that the rest of us don't really know about, the kind of world behind the curtain that that runs everything in a really corrupt and shady and horrific way. That's what Up and Is Down, Black and Is White was all about. Like that phrase, and that phrase comes back here. She remembers that. She remembers Punisher saying that. I think in some ways that's maybe the mantra for this whole book. Like thematically, having only read 3 arcs, I'd be really surprised if we didn't keep hitting that. It feels like thematically that's what this whole run is sort of about. Is that the relatively cozy society, civilized society that we live in is only possible because of people who who allow themselves to lose their humanity to give it to us. And so she's got that in common to some degree with the Punisher, and I could see her thinking that maybe we could make this work. Like when she says toward the end, pretty soon everybody I want to be dead is going to be dead. She has a revenge thing just like the Punisher does, but the difference is she's like, I keep going back to Batman, but she's like traditional comic book Batman versus, or Punisher is like traditional comic book Batman versus her Nolan Batman, in that she wants to be able to move on at some point. She wants there to be a world after revenge and after her version of the Punisher. And he says, and she says, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life after this. This is all I'm about. And that's kind of the big key with the Punisher, is he doesn't want there to be a world past that, or he can't see that there ever would be, however you want to look at it. And he says, whatever that is, I can't be a part of it, or it won't have me in it. And I think that if he didn't feel that way about it, maybe she would try to make something work with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's something that I like about both Punisher and Batman. Just character-wise, I think it's really interesting is that I see both of those characters as people that end up dying alone because they're so just like caught up in this like specific thing that they have to do that they can't really, take in anything outside of that, and every kind of relationship they have is fleeting in a sense. Obviously Batman to a lesser degree, but I mean that's Punisher and Batman if we're gonna compare them. Punisher's
Yeah,
way farther.
that's a really good point. Well, with Batman, it's always a question. Like when he says "I am vengeance," is he right about it? If Punisher ever said "I am vengeance," you'd have to say a little bit of an understatement, really. That's really the big difference between them. Batman ostensibly fights for a world where no child will ever have what happened to him happen to him or feel that way when his parents were murdered. And he probably doesn't think that his job will ever be done, but I think he'd like to think that it'd be great if it was. And the twisted thing with the Punisher is, does he actually want that? And that's a line I really latched onto real hard in this book. You have, I can't remember who said it, but there's a character that says, I think actually it might be Man of Stone, where he's like, he would have the world stay like this. And that's the difference between them, is that the Man of Stone is actually speaking truthfully, and he's a man of his word when he says that the people of Afghanistan, when he was doing all of his horrible kind of culling in the 80s, the people of Afghanistan have to go through these kind of horrible punishments in order to eventually live in a decent society where they'll be allowed to just live their lives. Like they have to submit. They have to know that we're in charge now, and we'll do whatever we have to them until they get the message. And once they do, not utopia. We'll get them as close to there as possible. If you put Punisher in charge, that's not what he would go for. He wouldn't care about that. He'd kill all the bad people.
Yeah, because Ennis Punisher is like his family. While that's what starts him on it, like his goal is really just like his origin is just getting him to a place that he wants to kind of be in anyways, where he just wants to be in that fight.
Yeah, I forgot about that. And that's kind of the tale of two Punishers, right? Where you have the one who snaps, that's more like the Batman thing where he's changed by that. And then you have the one that maybe would like to think that's what happened to him, but he was actually just waiting for this. Which is maybe the explanation for the British guy at the end's discussion about how did Punisher make himself this way when so many other people have had exactly what happened to Punisher happen to him, but they didn't get like that. Why is he special? How did he get that way? And
Yeah,
if he
like
was,
there's no specific formula you can take to become the Punisher.
yeah, and then the question is it all chemical in the first place? Is it all nature as opposed to nurture? Because I don't know what his childhood is like and what his parentage is like in Ennis. I don't know what we can glean from that because I haven't read enough of this.
Yeah, I don't think we ever really get into that.
It's
I know.
interesting if we don't, because then that question would always be there, right? Like that nature nurture thing. Your guess is as good as anybody's if you don't know his backstory.
Yeah, I know he did Punisher Born, which is his time in the military, but that's one of the few Ennis things that I haven't read.
Oh, real quick, let's go back to the Netflix thing for a second, because we have a super chat and then we have a question from
Oh yeah, definitely.
the requester, Captain Kuhn, $5 super chat. Somebody else made this comparison. Netflix Punisher is just doing Wolverine's solo bit. He gets out of the life and is pushed back in against his will.
First of all, I just want to say that's like the big thing that I don't like about Netflix Punisher is that every single season with him is getting him to be the Punisher.
Yeah.
When I think in season 2 of Daredevil, he pretty much just is the Punisher, and then we set him off to go and be in his own
Which
show.
makes it worse, right? Because first of all, we don't even do a Daredevil origin at all. Like he's Daredevil from the beginning. We're not like he's got soul searching, he's conflicted and all of that, but like he's already wearing at least a proto costume. He's doing his Daredevil thing. That could have been, and I mean it's very much like the Bendis run, like that could have just been Daredevil comics. And then Punisher seems that way, and you're absolutely right. And then suddenly it's like 007 reboot, where we're waiting the whole time for him to be the guy that we know him, and then you get into second season and we do that again. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and the last shot of that show is he like kicks down like a door at a gangster meeting. He just starts shooting people, and I'm like, the last shot of the show is he's finally the Punisher, and it's canceled.
And I mean, they might have. I'm sure they thought they were getting a third season, but that's
He would have just quit again.
The only break in status quo, the only impetus for a story we can think of is we got to try to bring him back into the life somehow.
It's
Do you
like
think
how
that
the
would
only
have?
Wakandan story they have is that they have to go get somebody that's outside their borders and bring them back.
Do you think that still would have happened if he hadn't been like if somehow he got a show but he wasn't in Daredevil first? Because I bet it would have. I bet it would have been exactly the same thing.
Yeah, well, and my biggest issue with the Netflix Punisher show, and I like that okay. I just have it's just for me it's not Punisher, but my biggest thing is they got a showrunner that I think was kind of afraid of that material. So I think yeah, it probably would have happened either way.
Yeah, and I sympathize with that. Like that, this kind of stuff is a tough story to tell, and it's especially hard these days. I would think to make Punisher seem remotely sympathetic, which is why I don't. I mean, I don't know that he even necessarily has to be. I'm not a big fan of this character, so I don't mind if he's thrown under the bus to some degree. I don't mind if he's the villain of his own story. I don't mind if if you call it Punisher, but he's in the background. Like I loved Aaron's stuff because it was character studies about other characters I was more interested in, and Punisher in comparison to them and being this kind of larger than life figure in the background that was messing with them with Kingpin and Bullseye was certainly necessary to tell that story. I'm not saying that he got in the way, and I wish the thing was called Bullseye and then Kingpin, but I enjoyed that more than I have this stuff just because I had more of an investment in the character studies.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think for me, what I would do is episode arcs for a Punisher show. You can have like ones where he's like more in the background, but I think you can do stories where he's more at the front too. And you can have characters that are
Yeah, sure.
both with him and ones who are like very much against that. And you can kind of paint both sides. And you also just need villains that are like really terrible people. So that even if you don't find yourself agreeing with the Punisher and like what he does, you can at least go, okay, yeah, but these people are awful people.
Well, that's the catharsis, right? The
Exactly.
idea is not that you have to relate to this character on a personal level. This is the reason that I've gotten into arguments with people about Batman sometimes, where they're like, "Cap, I don't understand how you find this character so relatable," and I'm like, in certain personal ways, I guess I do, but I think sometimes like larger than life iconic characters are more interesting to be either people to live up to, which is not the case with Punisher and not always the case with Batman, or characters that are kind of archetypal in some way, that are like really exaggerated and kind of elemental and fundamental. And Punisher is certainly that kind of thing. That's the heart of revenge thriller, which I've had to study a lot over the years doing comic and superhero review, because we go to the vigilante place so much that that genre keeps popping up. But again, it's not really my genre, but I know more about it now because I keep having to review those things. And it seems to me like the heart of revenge thriller is catharsis. It's we get to watch these monsters that we would love to believe don't exist, but we know do in real life, get just eviscerated or shot all to hell by somebody who believes that that is justice. And we don't have to condone what they do, but and like even slasher pictures have this sometimes, where like you're not applauding for the slasher, but there's a reason that a lot of the protagonists have to be terrible, stupid, awful people that we want to see die. It's a catharsis. It's supposed to be fun to watch them get all ripped to hell. And this isn't fun. This is a different kind of catharsis.
Hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. Also, if you're gonna do a Punisher show, don't spend 13 hours building up a Jigsaw origin just to have him be killed by a random side character in your second season. That's another big important thing. Don't do that.
Chewbacca's lover, who requested this arc, thanks to you, keeps asking if I think he wants me to do a fan casting thing, and he keeps asking about Elijah Dushku with regards to O'Brien, and he says he thinks she would have been great casting in the Punisher show for that character. We didn't get that character in that show at all. Kind of weird that they did Rollins but not her. But to his point, he was a totally different character. I don't remember much about what they did with him, but I know he's not this guy.
Apparently, gets his eye punched out.
He does. He does. Punisher punches his eye out, but I don't remember if his characterization was anything like this. I don't remember if he had that kind of scummy, backstabby, go with the wind kind of thing that he does in this. But you know, she and him are almost like arch nemesis in this, so it's really weird that they didn't have her. But anyway, he says he thinks, and we'll look at art here in a minute, and you guys can decide which of us is right about it. He says that she kind of looks a little bit like Dushku, and he thinks that that actor, that's Faith in Buffy, among other things, and that she has the right personality and everything to play that character. I don't right off see it. I mean, I think she might be versatile enough that she could have pulled it off. I don't really think that they look all that similar, and I see her, and a lot of this is Faith, but even in other roles she's had too, I don't really see Elijah Dushku as like a military type. Like, she's got the sometimes the kind of butch thing, and she's got maybe the right like body type for it, but just with roles I've seen her play and just her general personality, she seems to always be a like go against the grain, like rebellious type. I have a hard time seeing her ever playing a soldier, but maybe I don't usually do the fan casting thing because I'm terrible at it, but I was racking my brain before the show because I knew you were going to ask me about that, and I was thinking, okay, who would I pick though? Because I kept feeling like I was seeing an actress in her, but not Dushku. I think Colby Smulders, and I know that she's already, got the Shield thing, and she is in the Marvel movies. But like, if you didn't have that, I could see her playing this, and Colby Smulders in as what's her face. It's gonna come to me.
Cap, you're terrible at fan casting.
Oh, am I?
No, I don't know.
She is Mariah Hill. Maria Hill. She never gets enough to do in that stuff. So I've only ever
unfortunate.
I've only ever seen her in How I Met Your Mother. Apart from that, so I don't know what her dramatic range is. But I'd like to see that tested with her and see if she could do a role like that. But that was the first person that came to my mind.
That's cool. I know she has a show that Eric described as being like a Jessica Jones type show, but I don't know. I've never checked it out, so I don't know if it's any good.
Bob the Hun, I thought maybe I had the line wrong. I couldn't remember. He says, you got the line wrong. Rollins is the one who would make the world like this forever. Man of Stone respects Punisher. We're both soldiers. That's what it was. I must have so I didn't just get who said it wrong. I got oh no, he said it right. I got who said it right, but he wasn't talking about Punisher. He was talking about Rollins. That's right. I don't know if...
Yeah, that's right, because he says it to the Punisher when Punisher finds him.
That's what it was. Yeah. Okay. I think my thematic point to some degree still stands with that, but it's kind of interesting then comparing those two characters, because if Punisher... I mean, maybe the better way to look at it with Punisher isn't so much that he wants the world to stay the way it is, but that he doesn't have any kind of purpose if it isn't that way. And that's talked about with just soldiers in general in this. The idea that the War on Terror was a thing that the British soldiers, like, almost applauded. Like, they had a lot of drinks over 9/11 because they knew that business was about to be good. And all of that was really interesting. But the idea that maybe, to some degree, Punisher and Rollins have that in common, but Rollins is, in that case, the perverse version, where Punisher needs that sense of purpose, and he wants to be that, like, one-dimensional wraith. And there are and it's a cynical thing, of course. He doesn't think there will ever not be bad people in the world, so he's going to go kill them all, and he knows that there will always be plenty more. He sees them like cockroaches. He's not trying to change the world because he doesn't think it can be changed. And Rollins has that it's good for business thing, and that's why he would want it to stay that way forever. But yeah, thanks for correcting me on that, because you're absolutely right, and that changes, obviously the thematic idea there, but I still think what I was talking about is in there, just not because of that line, certainly.
Way to be wrong, Cap.
You know what? It happens. It happens. I read and review a lot of stuff. I'm bound to screw stuff up. So let's take a look at some of this art. And Austin, I gotta share my screen so you can see what we're looking at. Okay, so one thing that I found amusing about this arc is that the covers would lead you to believe that Punisher is tied to chairs a lot more often than he is, and it only happens in two places, and amusingly, neither of them are issues where that cover is there. So there are two covers, and as I'm scrolling through this, we'll see probably both of them, because I even made it the thumbnail. I think it's really funny. He's tied to a chair in the first issue, because it's that kind of like Black Widow and Avengers thing where he intentionally got himself into that situation, and these guys think they've got the leg up on him, but he's there on purpose. And then toward the end, there's a place where he gets tied to a chair. Second and third issue, both, I think in a row, both have covers where he's tied to a chair. Doesn't happen in either of those issues.
Yeah, the second time he gets tied up, they used in the it's in Daredevil, where he has like a razor that he's put into his arm. and he
Oh,
uses that to cut out.
I forgot about that. Yeah. What do you think of the art in general in this arc? Does it remain kind of the same artist through most of this book? I can't even remember. It's Fernandez.
I can't remember because when I was really big into Punisher, I wasn't as knowledgeable about writers and artists,
I seem to
so I
recall a
don't have that
consistency
offhand.
through a lot of this book.
Yeah, no, I remember it being pretty consistent too, and I like the art in this book. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't have any profound observations about it or anything. It looks like these other arcs. It's sufficiently well detailed. It's sufficiently cinematic. There are, especially toward the end, some really nice action scenes where they're not mired down by dialogue and read pretty quickly, which was kind of jarring in a way. And I realized I was looking at an action movie because, like, I read this. The first time around, feeling like I was looking at a much more like dialogue-driven thing and thinking a lot about what the story was about, and it was more of a ride the second time around. Like I don't think I was giving it credit enough as a spectacle. And some of that is just because this second issue, especially, I found myself a little bit kind of bored with the action because I didn't fully always know what was even going on plotting wise with all of the like military politics and the Russian stuff and all of that. So you've got like a series of several pages of like car chase and or not car chase, but like explosions and gunfights and things. And I'm like, I'm not really all that invested in any of this. I'm sort of waiting for the character stuff to come back. And so all of that was more interesting the second read.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, yeah. I guess, like you said, it was easier to get into it.
This might be the right place to talk about this real quick too. Another thing that I appreciated more in a second read, but I still have reservations about. Now that you say that, Austin, is not knowing where things were going. I found the non-linear kind of difficult first read because sometimes with nonlinear storytelling, I tend to give the book all the credit and myself no credit. A thing is happening that is building on something that has already happened that I'll see happen later, but because it hasn't happened yet, I'm rushing and thinking, oh my god, what did I miss? And assuming that I just wasn't paying close enough attention. And that happens a couple of times in this book, particularly the scene where O'Brien has been let go by the British general guy that was supposed to kill her. And then she's with Punisher, and you don't get any of the stuff in between until later. Again, non-linear. So the very next thing we see with her is just her talking to Frank Castle, and they're like camping, and she's like, "Hey, are you lonely?" He's like, "No," and she's like, "Do you want to have sex anyway?" And I'm like, when did this happen? Where and this is an issue I have with the art. I guess I'll say sometimes. Sometimes I can't tell who is supposed to be who in certain scenes. Like, I didn't realize that was Frank Castle in that scene. It took me a second read to know for sure who that was supposed to be in that moment.
Okay, yeah, for sure. When
There's
I
a
read it
couple
this
of
time
things like
again,
that.
with that specific moment, I was like, "Oh, I guess they're already together." Oh, and then we flash back. Okay,
There's
I'm
there's
with it.
the
But I did have it for
there's
like
the
a
other
second.
chair
Yeah.
cover. Sorry, what?
I said no. I did have that for about a second, where it was like, "Oh, like now they're together." Oh, we're flashing back. Okay, that makes sense.
There's another confusing panel I want to show you toward the end. Let me find it real quick. Where Rollins is. It's this one. So Rollins is about to try to cut Punisher's eye out. Eye for an eye. It's a little literal, right? And he's yelling at Punisher, and he's about to get his comeuppance and all of that. And then the very next panel, his head gets grabbed. And first time reading, I was really confused. I was like, whose head is being grabbed and what is going on here? And looking back over the page, I was able to look at the sequence and go, oh, okay, the blonde guy, they hate each other, is stopping him because he wasn't told he was allowed to do anything to Punisher. Okay, but what makes it even more confusing is when Rollins gets his head grabbed, Fernandez seems to have forgotten to draw the eye patch as his head is back like this. So if you look really close at it, he doesn't have an eye patch there. Or if he does, it's a partial eye patch, but you can still see his eye in the middle of it. Do you see that?
I gotta get like real close.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, wait a minute, who is that? It can't be Rollins. He doesn't have an eye patch. Oh, it is Rollins.
I guess he like maybe pulls it up. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, that's weird.
It's a little strange. Anyway, that's
Yeah,
a nitpick, but it's amusing. I thought I'd mention it.
What do you think of that whole thing, Cap, where
Yeah.
you know the Man of Stone and his kind of like blonde Russian guy henchman are the main villains, and then it's Rollins who kind of takes them out, and then he's the guy that Punisher has to go up against.
That felt like, in a way, kind of an epilogue. Like, it seemed like 41 was the real last issue of this arc, and then 42 is is tying up all the loose ends, is the end of the story stuff for the sequel to that other arc that we read before. Because we take out both O'Brien and Rollins in the same issue, and with O'Brien specifically, like with Rollins, that is a real typical traditional Punisher kill. Like, this guy deserves to die. I like the way that scene unravels, where he doesn't know she's dead, and he reveals it just before he kills Rollins in the most gruesome way possible. That was a great scene. I felt like the O'Brien thing was a little hurried and maybe even a little bit convenient, where it just after, it's almost like Ennis is telegraphing, I don't have anything left to say with this character. Because right after she says, what else do I do with my life now? Mine! And she just blows up! Or doesn't blow up, but she dies right after that.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. I guess I like that just in how it fits in the kind of horrors of war, like I was talking about. Like, there's a lot of just imagery of.
Too. That's good.
Yeah, but I know what you mean from like a story perspective of just. Okay, now she's gone. No, I can agree with you on that.
Yeah, thematically fits in this arc too well not to do it there, I guess. And I'm not saying I would have wanted this to be an issue longer, because I got to the end of 41 and it was like, what else is there really to do here? And it's, okay, we're tying up all these loose ends, because I wasn't expecting those characters to both get killed, and we're just kind of, resetting the slate after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. And got to take out like the rest of the people that she was after and all that, just finishing that up.
Mm-hmm.
Which is nice that they do kind of go back to that, and it's not just left dangling.
And it's got the poetic justice that you would expect it to, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's all handled really well.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Let's see what other art I picked here, and just see if there's anything else we want to look at. I like the melancholy and sadness at the end of I guess it's 41 when she dies, and there's just no dialogue on the page, and then he's holding her at the end and mourning in the only way Punisher's going to. That was all really, really nice, and the kind of panels that you want to really linger on, that you're imagining if this was in a show or a movie. This whole scene takes 4 minutes of him just standing there. It's.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that Logan thing, right?
Well, it's like that person said, it's Wolverine. It was about the Netflix show.
Yeah. That was a good point, though.
Back around.
By the way. But yeah, I like all this kind of moody isolation, loner stuff with Punisher.
You don't have the panel, though, where he throws a rock at him.
No, I thought I'd leave that out. That's also pretty gruesome.
I'll throw a rock at him.
But anyway, Austin, what else do you want to say about this before we wrap up? We're already at an hour, somehow.
That's crazy. Yeah, there's not a lot. This is, It's not like one of my favorite Punisher Max arcs, but it's pretty good. Uh, I don't think there's really any arc of this series that like isn't good. But I also understand, the kind of taste issues that you have with it, and that it's not your
Sure.
thing. Punisher in general is one of those characters where you either like it or you don't, and people seem to be more 50-50 on him.
And I think some of that has to do with genre sensibilities too, because if you like Punisher, you probably like revenge thriller as a thing, and that
Hmm.
probably resonates with you in a way that it doesn't as much with me sometimes.
I wanted to ask you, have you ever read the Warren Ellis James Bond book?
I know I've listened to Eric talk about it. I don't think I've actually sat down with it myself.
Oh, okay. I just wondered because that I've only read the first one. I still have to read the second one, but that kind of feels like a James Bond Punisher Maxi type book. That's the only reason I wondered. Because I knew you guys had a review on the channel, but I wasn't sure if it was you and Eric or just Eric.
It was just Eric. I mean, I was sitting there because we reviewed like 8 hours worth of other crap around it, but
Yep.
back when we used to do that insanity. If you think the daily streaming I've been doing lately is crazy, just imagine going back to the days of the omnibus where you don't shoot for 3 weeks and then you sit down for 8 to 10 straight hours overnight and just review everything.
Yeah, I guess I'm glad I don't have to sit on Skype for 10 hours.
We were crazy people. I'll make you do it one of these days,
Okay, that's fine.
and then you'll never come back. Bob the Hun says Vincent D'Onofrio could have played Man of Stone. Yeah, definitely. Because, I mean, it's really interesting the ways in which that guy is Kingpin and not Kingpin. I meant to talk about some of that, and I didn't really get into it. But did you have that where there are maybe some character parallels you can make, or kind of a compare contrast thing you can do with him and Kingpin? And is it just that they're big bald guys?
No, when I was reading it again, I was thinking about it, and I was wondering if maybe Garth Ennis was thinking about Kingpin and was like, "This is going to be kind of my Punisher Maxi Kingpin." But I
Yeah,
don't know
I
if
had
there's
that too.
any truth to that, because he doesn't, outside of Barracuda, I don't think he uses any comic book villains. I don't think I know microchips in like the first arc, but that's kind of different. But they're mainly just kind of one-off stuff, which is what you kind of have to do with this character.
Well, and Kingpin, obviously, I mean, talking about Netflix, this is what Daredevil did with it. I mean, Kingpin looks at himself sometimes also as necessary evil. And I like all the stuff here about the Man of Stone, again, seeing himself as necessary evil, thinking that um, he is still out for his country, and that he is just a um, like servant of the state, even though he is going rogue and going off on his own and isn't really reporting to anyone. And it's because he doesn't think that Russia's handling things correctly and that they're apathetic, and he's got to take it upon himself to like snap his country out of apathy. And so this whole thing is kind of a conspiracy in order to do that. So what he's doing could to the Russian government look like treason, in perhaps, but to him, it's he's he's what is the word I'm looking for? He's loyal to the state. And at one point toward the beginning, somebody suggests that he's just a mob boss type, and he's like, that's not what I am at all. And that's where I was thinking, oh, he's Kingpin and doesn't realize it.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's really interesting about him. Um, Chewbacca's lover just corrected me. Apparently, Barracuda is from Max
Yeah, that's what Chewbacca's lover, like in the
originally.
first place.
Yeah, I clearly forgot that. Yeah, interesting.
Oh, and Chewbacca's lover said that he picked this one because I liked O'Brien in the first review. Well, that's, I'm glad to know what happened to her.
Were you sad that she got stepped on a mine?
I mean, a little, but I think less so because I was convinced that there wasn't much else to do with that character. And then immediately she's dead, and then I found it kind of funny.
And then you're like, well, I'm glad you're dead.
No, I wouldn't go that far. Well, anyway, everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed our review of the Man of Stone arc from Punisher Max. Next time, we're going to do the last in our trilogy of requested comic reviews, and we're finally going to tackle Planet Hulk, which I've never read, and so obviously never talked about, and that's been a blind spot for me for years. Have you ever looked at it?
No, so at one point, well, I mean, I used to do this with every Marvel character. When I wanted to get into them, I'd go and read the essential volumes, the old black and white ones.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, that's what I did with Iron Man, Avengers, X-Men, all this stuff. And
I was always a prude about that. I was like, why would I want to read it in black and white? It was supposed to be colored.
No, it was always the trade-off where I was like, I don't have enough money to buy a ton of these older comics in color, so I just have a trade-off, and it sucks, but it just kind of is what it is. And I read the
That's
first
why
three...
digital now is the only way to go if you don't have a lot of money to burn. You're not trying to build a library and you just want to read back catalog. It's the only way to fly at this point.
Yeah, I wish Kid Me had Marvel Unlimited. I could have finally gotten to Ghost Rider.
My kids are so spoiled, dude.
It's nuts. Because
they can read virtually anything they can think of and not have to pay more than the $25 or so I'm paying for subscription services. I mean, a month, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. It's nuts. But I read the first 3 volumes of Essential Hulk, and I was like, I clearly just don't like the Hulk, and never tried anything again. And I'm finally like, okay, everybody tells me I gotta read stuff like Peter David, and that's where, Hulk is good. I need to finally actually do that. And I own Planet Hulk, but I haven't gotten to it yet, so I'm interested to read some good Hulk.
That was requested by Elliot Slater. I'm really glad that he's finally making us take a look at that. RJ Godzilla, I watched the animated movie of Planet Hulk. Could you do a compare and contrast of them? I will just read the comic for next time, and then maybe in the not-too-distant future, I'll do a off-the-cuff rewind discussion on that movie, because I've been avoiding it because I haven't read the comic material. So I've had it on my shelf for 8 years, and I've just never watched it.
I can compare and contrast that book to Ragnarok if you want.
Oh, I probably could also do that.
Also, make sure to join us on Friday for Batwoman.
Batwoman?
Yeah.
Wait, why? We're not doing Batwoman on Friday.
Oh, okay.
We do. You did win the right to force me to watch more of that show, and I actually forgot about that until just now. We will do that soon, and I'm sure everybody's just chomping at the bit to have to sit through more of that. No, that's not what we're doing this Friday.
I didn't think we were telling anybody, so that's why I was like, Batwoman.
No, we're doing a secret thing on Friday, but I don't want to. I don't want to make people think that it's Batwoman because then nobody will show up to it. We're starting something.
I'm gonna self-sabotage.
Stop it! We're starting something cool on Friday. It'll be live at 10 Central. It will be a blind commentary, and that's all we're gonna tell you about it. It's gonna be a sleeper drop thing for a new occasional ongoing series we're doing, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. But it's not Batwoman, okay? It's way cooler than Batwoman. It's a thing that people want. At least a lot more than Batwoman. It's a thing people have requested, okay? So, at least the series. Whatever, anyway.
It's not Batwoman.
Stop sabotaging the channel. Stop it. It's not okay. I keep pointing. And anyway, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I may or may not be back again tomorrow night for some kind of a stream, because if I do stream tomorrow, that will be 7 in a row, and that is just a crazy record, and I would love to make that happen if I come up with the right things. So anyway,
you're going to try to stream 8 days a week.
I'm just playing everything by ear right now. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again real soon. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
Batwoman. That's what the hole in my brain made me say.
Happy reading, everybody. Bye.
Bye.